A few days ago, I was struck with a sudden and unavoidable sense of dread that took me hours to pull myself out of. It was caused by something that, on the surface, seems rather menial: a new EV battery plant opening in Georgia down near the coast. The plant is projected to bring over 10,000 jobs to the region and create an explosion of economic growth. On the surface, it's a brilliant win for both economists and environmentalists alike. The plant will be producing electric cars and electric batteries, contributing to the clean energy explosion that's expected to happen in the future. It should have made me smile, yet as I perused articles about the building of the plant, something else settled within the pit of my stomach that I couldn't quite place. It wasn't dread, no, it was something else: sadness. While most articles laud the massive meta plant as an important step for Georgia's economy, local news articles are focusing more on the quality of life for residents living in Ellabelle, Georgia. Ellabelle is a small town on the outskirts of Savannah, Georgia. Quiet and sleepy, it was the perfect place for folks looking for small town living. All of that is going to change in the next few years. The building of the plant alone has forced animals out of their habitat, and the noise and dust stirred up by the trucks has impacted the air quality of residents living in the town. Many have and are considering selling their homes and the land that they've built for themselves. All of this, of course, is in the name of progress and product. I'm certainly torn on the issue. President Joe Biden has made an effort to bring back American manufacturing jobs, and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has capitalized on the opportunity to make Georgia America's EV hub. Now, I'm not going to make this about whether or not EVs are the right way to go. I certainly have my own concerns about the push for electric vehicles, which I might talk about in a later video. Instead, I want to talk about the chief topic that's stayed on my mind since reading about this new EV plant in Georgia, which is the concept of infinite economic growth. Before I continue, I want to make it clear that I'm not an economist. My knowledge regarding economics is scarce. I'll try my best to let the economists do the talking when it comes to economics, but just know that the intricacies of our vastly complex economic system are not within my wheelhouse to break down as accurately as someone with a master's from Yale could. Instead, I'll try my best to talk about what I do know in regards to the economy. I do know that our resources are finite, and that eventually, if you expand far enough, you hit water. And luckily, I'm not alone in that assessment. An article that I came across summarizes this point succinctly. I won't go over the entire thing, but I'll link it in the comments. It's behind a paywall, but there are ways to get around that. Herman Daly, a senior economist at the World Bank, sums it up best. It's a false assumption to say that growth is increasing the standard of living in the present world because we measure growth as growth in GDP. If it goes up, does that mean we're increasing standards of living? We've said that it does, but we've left out all the cost of increasing GDP. We really don't know that the standard is going up. If you subtract for the deaths and injuries caused by automobile accidents, chemical pollution, wildfires, and many other costs induced by excessive growth, it's not clear at all. Now, what I just said is most true for richer countries. Certainly some other countries that are struggling for sustenance, then, by all means, GDP growth increases welfare. They need economic growth. That means that the wealthy part of the world has to make ecological room for the poor to catch up to an acceptable standard of living. That means cutting back on per capita consumption, that we don't hog all the resources for trivial consumption. I'm not the first, nor will I be the last to say this. The current way that we frame progress is not only wrong, but also dangerous. Just because we have more stuff doesn't mean that we're any more fulfilled or any more healthy than we were in the past. In fact, there are arguments to be made that we're becoming unhealthier. See the increasing rate of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Our measurement for human progress has strictly been GDP, which is a wholly inaccurate way of judging the overall prosperity and happiness of a nation. I'm also not convinced that this notion that the only way to progress is to grow, perhaps that was true in the age of, say, Jeffersonian politics or during America's push westward. We live in the modern age, and we've filled in all the blank spaces on the world map. There are very few places that are entirely uninhabited now, and besides the vast expanse of the cosmos itself, there are no new places for humans to really spread like we once did. As Herman Daly explains, what I call the empty world was full of natural resources that had not been exploited. What I call the full world is now full of people that exploit those resources, and it is empty of the resources that have been depleted and the spaces that have been polluted. So it's a question of empty of what and full of what. Is it empty of benefits and full of cost, or full of benefits and empty of cost? That gets to that point of paying attention to the cost of growth. I would make the argument that humanity is currently grappling with that old world mindset. And no, I don't mean Europe when I use the phrase old world in this context, and we're stuck at this very delicate impasse. The old world mindset is the mindset of manifest destiny and divine right, and as that age comes to a close and the world begins to grapple with sustainability as opposed to expansion, fundamental questions will need to be asked about the functionality of our current social and economic models. I've heard many sound critiques of capitalism, and while I don't really fancy myself a hardcore anti capitalist, I will say that the best critique of capitalism I've heard is that capitalism is too efficient to the point that it becomes useless in a way. Useless in doing what Reaganite Republicans said it was always supposed to do: lift people up from poverty, spread goods to the masses, and allow people to participate in society on equal footing. Productivity is good, but one of the things I've been attempting to really figure out is to what benefit are many of the products being produced. Efficiency is exactly what it is: efficiency. It's a mode of being, a speed. It's fantastic if you're trying to get somewhere or get something done, but it's a terrible metric to judge whether or not a given thing is truly beneficial. Capitalism is fantastic at growing the wealth of a given nation, and even in a country as allergic to welfare as America, social progress will force that accumulated wealth to be used and spread in some way, shape, or form. A perfect example would be the skincare industry, one of the bigger contributors to global plastic waste. There has been plenty of research to indicate that in the Western world, our consumption of processed foods, along with our sedentary lifestyle and pollution, are major contributors to acne and other skin problems. It's morbidly ironic that the skincare industry seeks to provide people with a remedy in the form of dubiously proven solutions to the very issues it helps create. Plastic waste is a hugely underrated contributor to environmental degradation, and the microplastics created from such waste have been linked to a host of negative health issues. I could name probably another dozen industries with this same cyclical effect, with efficiency being at the core. It is easy now to pump out the products that make the skincare industry value globally at almost $150 billion, with numbers only expected to rise. And the question in my mind becomes this: is such a design truly beneficial? America's GDP has only grown over the past century, yet reports have consistently shown that our life expectancy is actually decreasing. Currently, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, with only 45 adults saying that they have enough money for emergency funds. There are massive issues facing both rural and urban areas of America, from crime to healthcare. None of this is reflected in the measurement that is GDP, which speaks only to how much is being produced and how much is spent. Grow, produce, spend, repeat. While it might seem rather terrifying to decouple economic growth from the idea of human progress and contentment, I think it presents an incredible opportunity to find a new level of prosperity and human happiness, especially in the Western world. It's not a coincidence that the latest TikTok viral video involved a member of Gen Z lamenting about the downsides of a typical 9 to 5, or that the generation currently entering the workforce has realized that there really is more to life than this hyper obsessive pursuit of wealth and consumption. The seeds have already been planted, and while I'm not in favor of abandoning certain capitalist sentiments, I would caution folks about refusing to question whether or not there is something else that can accommodate how things currently are, not how they once were.